So we know that, when the Alter Rebbe says, mind over heart, I think he means will over impulse. So every parent knows that because that's what we teach our kids all the time. This is Rabbi Avraham Dov Orbach of Avrich, and he's of the second or third generation, 1765 to 1840. It's mainly 19th century Hasidic master.
We'll be talking about this concept of slavery and freedom as it relates to Pesach and our lives in general. And what's interesting is that the verse that we're going to be using, along comes Rashi, the premier commentator, and he says two words, which is going to get into why the following pasuk, which we're quoting here, is in context. He says, "Shtari." Why are you allowed to do that? Shtari kodem.
Mm-hmm.
My, meaning God is speaking, my contract between me, the Jewish people, and the land, and that interconnection precedes, has a higher status or legal standing than your contract between buyer and seller. My intention was that this land stays with the person who I said inherits this particular piece of land. You came along because you needed money and you made a deal. Fine, as far as it goes. But now they can buy back. My original intention takes precedence.
That's right.
So why does Rashi say that? Because the pasuk, as you're about to say, talks about that we are servants of God, not servants of people.
You do not need to know Hebrew to appreciate the teachings, but if you are a Hebrew reader and you want to follow in the text, so we want to show you how to use the source sheet that we have created with the Hebrew text of Rabbi Orbach and the original verse as well. So you go to our website and you will go to on the website. There you go. You will go to Jewish resources and go down to Parsha videos. And here's a source sheet so you can enjoy that. We have the Pasuk. This is Leviticus chapter 25, 55. You can also open up your own Chumash. And a little bit about Rabbi Auerbach, and this is his commentary. This is what we're going to be reading today. Now, while you're on the website, please do click around and explore the other services and resources we have here for you. Most particularly, we're proud of the new Simple Meaningful Bar and Bat Mitzvah program, and you can find information about that right here. This is independent, curated or customized bar and bat mitzvah services for the independent family. If you'd like to join us every Wednesday morning, we set up a meetup.com. You go to meetup.com to weekly Parsha and Chassidut right here Wednesday mornings, and you can join us and view the lesson live and then join us for questions and answers after the lesson is over. And finally, please do subscribe, like, and share this video. We always appreciate that. So first of all, just to read the verse a little more in detail here. The verse says, as the people of Israel are my slaves, those whom I have taken out of the land of Egypt. Ani Adonai Elohechem, I am Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, your God. Again, Leviticus 25:55. And it says, Rabbi Auerbach, הנה עיקר שלמות העבודה הוא להיות בבחינת חרות על הלוחות. So he says the core of our service to God is to be as if we are inscribed on the tablets of the covenant.
Charus al is engraved through the stones, the tablets. You know, I'm sure
Right.
A lot of people saw Charlton Heston dressed up like Moses coming down the mountain there in the bathtub of Jello where they had the Red Sea. You know, so the tablets that he was holding, which were the wrong shape, of course, but anyway, they were engraved. So we are taught that the one of the miracles of the tablets of the Ten Commandments was that the letters were engraved through and through, through the stone. The word charus means engraved.
Right.
Okay. Our sages, by switching a vowel, as Reuben is about to go forward, are going to have a different kind of an interpretation for the word engraved. Okay.
So this is what he brings that midrash here from the Gemara. Al tikri charut el achirut. So they play with the word charut. So the word charut, engraved, are the same letters of the word cherut, liberation or freedom, right? So the rabbis say, don't read it to be engraved on the tablets, but read it as being freed by the tablets. And this is like the freedom that we get from Torah. And to put it in more universalistic language, this is the freedom we get from serving God. The point is that true freedom comes from serving God, which does not extend from simple logic. This is a bit of a deeper logic. So, and we'll see how this works out. He's going to talk about it. So, al tikri charut el achirut, and he gives us the source, Reuben, Nun Daled, 54. This is the Gemara. Liot b'bchinat avadai hem. They are, what this means is, and here he goes through it, that they will be as if my slaves, v'lo avadim le'avadim, not the slaves of slaves. And this is the Rashi that you brought before, that they can't, that because all human beings are, as it were, the servants or the slaves of God. So Bnei Israel, they cannot be slaves of somebody else, of another human being, especially of another Jew.
Right. Now he's finished with the course. He's going to get into what he wants to get into now. I just want to say, because I think it's interesting, the Gemara he's quoting here, Lo avad, you shouldn't be slaves to slaves. This is taken from an interesting Gemara, which talks about labor relations. Okay. The idea of the employee-employer relationship, which is spoken about a lot in the Torah and in Jewish law. The more generalized question is, are rules of employment more beneficial to the employer or to the employee? And it turns out that according to the Torah, the labor laws are set out to be more beneficial to the employee, which is fascinating. The reason given here is that we're talking about today. The Gemara concludes over there, because we are servants of God ultimately. But when it comes to employer-employee, yes, I can serve as an employee, but I have a lot of rights because you're not my ultimate boss.
So the same with slaves, and I think it's connected also to the what's called indentured slavery.
Sure.
If I owe somebody money and I need to instead I don't have the cash to pay back, so I can pay back with my labor, so I become a slave. But at the end of the sabbatical year, I go free. The end of the Jubilee year, the debts are raised. Jubilee year, it's I go free, and this is also connected to that because I can't be an eternal slave of a human being.
Right.
Right. So that is a principle. So he takes it to a whole different direction now. So that means not to be enslaved to materiality. Right. So he says, okay, so this is even beyond the relationships between people, as I understand it. But this is the enslavement we have to our cravings, to our material cravings.
Right. Now he's going to get into this whole Hasidic thing about that we shouldn't become enslaved to ourselves,
Yep.
to our base desires and
so
things that we think we need and want.
Right. So he internalizes it, and he talks about we're not only slaves to others, but guess who's the worst taskmaster, Okay, so here he goes. He says, do not be enslaved neither to your love or to your fear in the material realm. Right? It's interesting. Usually we talk about cravings, about our desires. It's like, don't be enslaved to your desires. My father used to say, Goy Soiefer. It's like when I was a child, it's Yiddish for big eyes. You're walking down the street. Oh, I want that. But, Abba, can you buy this for me? Can you buy that for me? Everything you see when you're a child, it's like, you want it, you need it. I need it now, urgent.
Right.
A minute before, I never knew I needed it.
Right. Right.
So, so when we grow up, as we mature, we lose a lot of that, or maybe we lose the urgency around it, but it doesn't go completely away. I mean, we're still, we're still enslaved, even if we have it, what's the word, sublimated. We have it sort of under control.
Yeah.
For some more, some less. Okay, so he says, Leov or do not be enslaved either to the desire or to the fear of in the material realm. For instance, when you are afraid of a person, lest that person harm you, or to count in another person to save you. Interesting, right? Don't get wrapped up in feeling that people are going to harm you, and also don't get wrapped up in feeling that other people are going to save you. Neither.
Wow, this is an incredible lesson.
Right, and I don't think he means don't get help from other people, but he says help ultimately doesn't come from other people. It doesn't come from, and neither harm from other people. I mean, the more philosophically and the more Kabbalistically you go with that, the more, it can get abstract to kind of mind-bending places. But ultimately, one needs to count on oneself, and one needs to count on one's spiritual connection. And that is, reminds me of a story about I read about Reb Zusha, who I'll tell you, it's worth telling. So in Anapol, in his town, the owner of the tavern was a Jewish man, and a bunch of this is apropos, Russian soldiers from the Tsar's army are coming into the tavern, and they're getting drunk and they're starting to destroy everything, and he's afraid for his life. So he runs to his Rebbe, to Reb Zusha. He said, Reb Zusha, this is happening. Can you help me? So Reb Zusha, in his kindly way, he comes to the tavern, but he doesn't go into the tavern. He comes to the window, and he stands in the window. And so the Russian soldiers see Reb Zusha in the window, and after a few minutes or so, all of a sudden they get struck with fear. They grab their things and they run away. So the owner, then comes to Reb and says, "What was that? How did you do that?" And Reb says, "Oh, I just stood there and chanted Tehillim. I just chanted the Psalms." So it's a beautiful story because so they thought it was some kind of this is the big white white-haired, big bearded Jewish-looking guy standing there. Zusha was a saint of saints, from the stories about him, and that all it took. Who knows what happened in their minds? They thought, oh, this is some sorcerer, standing up. They saw him, at least on the surface, you could say, they saw him doing some weird stuff and they got spooked and they ran away. But, so anyway, so Yeshua, redemption comes in many different forms. And I think what the story models, the reason it popped up in my head, is that there's a certain spiritual level when, somebody like Reb Zusha, who's really practiced in knowing the power of his connection to the heavens. So he has no doubt,
Right.
Maybe somebody else, if, he's doubting. And this is what the Rabbi Obach is saying, don't be afraid of people and don't expect people to, he's pointing us in that direction. That there's a way that if we have confidence in a spiritual connection, we don't need to, much less fear. And now he's becoming very actually clear. He's just spelling it out. And also don't be enslaved to material cravings. But be freedom. Be in the aspect of freedom. He says, he does not say attain freedom, behave in freedom. He says, be, be, become, you become freedom, as if it's engraved in your neshama, right? That's the connection to charut, engraved freedom.
Right.
Such that the person has control over his own nature. A person has subdued his own natural inclinations, to break or to shatter his own material cravings.
Yeah, so this line is really important. It's important for everybody. It's particularly important through the lens of Hasidic philosophy and Judaism in general, but for everybody in the world, this is an idea. It's a little bit of an out-of-fashion idea. As a matter of fact, many in the majority culture would argue with this idea, and they would argue for the opposite. What do I mean? What he's saying is that freedom, really being a free person, is to be in control of oneself, to not do whatever I feel I want to do. And you could say, fortunately or unfortunately, this idea is frowned upon by many in society and our culture, where no, freedom means I'm free to do whatever I want to do.
Yeah.
I'll do what I want when I want to do it.
Right.
I'll say anything I want. I will present myself as whatever I want. So this is the exact opposite of that. So, but psychologically, it's a hard, it really, what he's talking about is such a basic fundamental thing, but psychologically,
It's counterintuitive.
It's counterintuitive. And it's amazing, you know, this whole idea of the Balatanya says, "Hamoach shalit al halev," that the whole key to living a full life is your mind ruling your heart. Your heart meaning your emotions and your desires. And this is an amazing idea, which a lot of people would legitimately argue with.
Right, and to put it, you know, to reframe it just slightly, I think it makes maybe a little clearer, is will over impulse. Mm-hmm. So we know that, you know, when the Alter Rebbe says, you know, mind over heart, I think he means will over impulse. So every parent knows that because that's what we teach our kids all the time. You know, you can't scream, you can't have a tantrum, you know, temper tantrum in the middle of the party. You know, behave yourself. You know, go to your room. You know, something like
right.
that. So that's the willful. That's the beginning, but he says this is not for children. This is for grown-ups. You know, this is for all of us, and that's true freedom.
The willpower to control oneself has to come first before we can even consider or contemplate reaching any sort of spiritual heights or contemplation.
Good. So let's continue. He goes a little Kabbalistic here. And then after one is can control one's cravings, material cravings, a person can bring light, the light of holiness, into the lower realms. This is in essence, according to the Zohar and other sources, this is the whole purpose of us being here, especially for the Jewish people, is to bring light from above into this world. ותמיד יסתכל בבחינת חסד וקדושה שבכל דבר. Such that a person could always see the aspects of loving kindness and holiness that is in everything. Which is interesting, you know, if you bring light into everything, one of the ways to do that is to see the light that is in everything already. You know, it's a little bit of a paradox there. And he's quoting a verse to reinforce that everything is only created for God's glory or God's honor. In other words, uvishvila chesed, and for loving kindness. As in another proof text, as the Torah says, that you should love God with all your hearts, not one heart, but hearts. And then he explains, it's a well-known commentary, that one should love God with all inclinations, the good inclinations and the evil inclinations. Now he explains what that means, actually. He said that one should believe or have the world view that God created the evil impulse or the material impulse also from a place of loving kindness in order to give people the opportunity to transform it, I would say.
What I'm hearing, I don't know if I'm right, because he starts hitting hard on Sormei Ra, on controlling yourself and staying away from the Gashmias.
Yeah.
And then he goes, and then you'll make yourself a vessel to bring holiness into yourself, and then the holiness will affect all around you. But I think here, when he says it should be done with chesed, I think he's saying that, you know, psychologically, when we start to work on ourselves that we shouldn't make an enemy of ourselves, of our Yitzhar. In other words, a person when a person begins to acknowledge his weaknesses in terms of dealing with his taivas, his basic desires and whatnot, he could start to beat himself up.
That's right.
And put himself down and become depressed.
Right.
And they go, wow, you know what? I just learned about staying away from my taivas, and boy, I'm a real like messed up guy, you know? Yeah. So he's saying, no. It's all a chesed.
Yeah.
It's all, Hashem made the Yitzhar also. Yeah. You know, you have to serve God with every part of you. You know, you work it through, and then you'll transform it into good stuff.
That's beautiful.
And then you'll bring the light into everything.
Yeah. I'm saying it's all purposeful. Even the struggles are purposeful. Even the fact that you have weaknesses or you have cravings, it's also purposeful. You know, it's the grist for the mill. This gives you the opportunity to get better. Doesn't mean it's not a label. It doesn't mean you're bad. Certainly the Hasidim were not into that kind of self deprecation. You know, that's not, you know, from the Baal Shem Tov up. I mean, this is not the way for you to serve God. But what I wanted to say was, I think what happens also is if you do that, you kind of you're splitting yourself, you know, and we're looking for unity, you know. So if we're looking for unity, there's a unity in the world, there's unity within us, and we start going black and white. Here's the black piece of me, here's the white piece of me. That can't be godly, because there's no unity. You know, it's got to go into this place of really severe duality, you know, and then that's not what God wants. Right. You know, I think that's what he's saying. My big takeaway from this is what you said before about how freedom is, and as I'm maturing, as I'm you know, I'm now that I'm past 35, you know, I'm really coming to see how what I thought freedom was is not, you know. So how counterintuitive, you know, freedom is, and you expressed it so well before when you said that rather more control is more freedom, which is like a paradox, and that's so true for me. You know, it's I think I did not get it when I was younger, but you know, as time goes on, I can see that. And there's also a piece of delayed gratifications. You know, when you're young, I want freedom now. You know, so anything goes. And then I think as you season, you start seeing that you may have less freedom now, but there's going to be greater freedom and deeper freedom coming later, as you know. So for me, that's the big takeaway.
Oh, I think my takeaway was, this lesson, which you can never learn enough, that one should train oneself, just like we train our physical muscles, right, and they have to be constantly exercised. We need to be in mind training. In other words, it's nice of me and you to sit here schmoozing over a Zoom, but when we get out into the world and someone bumps into me in Walmart, you know, or calls me a name someplace, or someone gives me a stink eye, when the thing occurs, that I'm ready. My muscle memory, my mind memory is there, right, and I say, oh, I see what's happening. I'm going to control this situation, but I'm going to treat this mindfully.
Yeah,
that's it.
You could say that, I mean, in terms of Pesach, that's the whole, you know, for people, you see, people didn't just become free overnight. I mean, they crossed the sea overnight, but they had 40 years of practice in the desert. So you know, we get the insight. I read this in a flash, but to practice it, I have 40 years in the desert to work the muscle memory, as you say. Okay, I think with that, we're going to conclude here today. Again, please share, like, and subscribe, and a good intermediate days of Passover, Moedim L'Simcha, and God willing, we'll see you next Wednesday at 9 o'clock in the morning. Shalom for now.
מים רבים לא יוכלו לכבויסס אהבו מים רבים לא יוכלו